I'm not even going to attempt to remember what day it is, how many days I've been working on this motor, but it's quite a few. So anyway, just starting a new week, and this is where things look at this point. So as you can see, we've got the head painted, we've got the thermostat housing with new fittings. We've got the side plate on, which has been a major part of this project, as you know from watching the first video. Got the new hose on, got the new belt on for the alternator. Do not have the new parts yet for the distributor, but those are due this week, so I'll get that installed and get it finally back together. Got the new raw water intake pump on. This side, the exit side of the pump, is tightened down and is in place. I'm not going to tighten this one down yet until I get a seawater strainer hooked up in the engine compartment. So the way that the cooling water will work is that it will come from outside the boat through one of the through hulls that we replaced when we were in the boatyard. It'll come up through that hose, go to the raw water strainer, come out of the strainer, go into the pump here, and then exit and go through the engine like we've talked about before. So one of the corrections I want to make from the last video that I was watching and produced yesterday, one of the corrections I want to make is that you'll recall when I was putting the new seal into the rear coupling here, I called it a bearing. And if you'll recall, I showed you that. That's the old one. That is not a bearing, it is a seal, and that is the seal that was leaking, and so we put a new seal in here. Now there is a bearing in there, but I checked the bearing out and it seemed to be in good working order, but it was the seal that I replaced, not the bearing. So I just wanted to make that correction, and by the time this is published, somebody may call me out on it online and correct me, but anyway, just wanted to say that. And so we're ready to start now. I'm getting ready to put the new or not new, but the newly painted and refurbished starter back in the motor. Then we'll do the alternator, then we'll do the final hookup and install the thermostat, and on and on. So it's going to be kind of a big day and a big week, but that's where we are for now. I wanted to just give you a little background on this distributor before I finish putting it all back together. When I first took the distributor cap off of the distributor, it was not real pretty. It looked like this, and like this. And my original intent was just to replace the points in the condenser and clean it up a little bit, but I hadn't planned on taking the plate off of this distributor that the condenser and the points sit on, because I don't know a lot about distributors, but I did know that all of the integral workings of the distributor are located underneath the plate that the condenser and the points sit on. So I was watching a Don Moyer video from Moyer Marine, and he said, you know, when you're working with your distributor and you're changing out your points and stuff like that, you might go ahead and take that cover plate off and check to see that everything looks okay down there, and maybe put a drop of oil on some of the moving parts and that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll go ahead and do that. So I took the plate off, and this is what I found. This is what I saw. There were supposed to be 2 springs on there. There was only one. The other one was laying in there broken in half. It had rusted, and it was just a very, very scary mess. One more scary mess on this motor. But anyway, I took all those parts out of there, cleaned them up, and now we have this, which I'm quite pleased with. And now it's time to go ahead and put the new plate on here that has the new points and condenser. And it's going to look something like that. And then the distributor cap goes on top of that, and your plug wires plug into the distributor cap, and everybody's happy. But I just had to share that with you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the newly refurbished Atomic 4 motor for my sailboat. It's been about 3 weeks since we pulled it out, and it's taken that long for me to get the parts that I need and do the work that I need to do. Of course, as I've said before, this side of the engine, which as you're facing the engine would be the left side of the motor, is the area that I dedicated the most work to. As you can see, we painted the block, I painted the head, I painted the thermostat housing, new clamps, new hoses, new spark plugs, new spark plug wires, new alternator, new guts to the distributor, new water pump fittings, and new paint, new fan belt, or not a fan belt, it's a accessory drive alternator belt. And the only part that I didn't paint, and I may one day do that, I don't know, it's not a priority, is the front of the motor here, the flywheel cover or housing, and I may do that at some point. But I think she looks pretty good. What do you guys think? On this side of the motor, all I did was clean up. Everything looked good over here. It was just a little dirty, so I cleaned it up real good. One of the things that I left out as far as new things is the rear oil seal, and we also put a new coupling in. So I also put, this is all new wiring, it's all bundled together in a very neat and orderly way. Put a new, but not a bus bar, it really is a bus bar, but it's more a junction bar, if you will. So all of the wiring from the motor, the alternator, the water pressure, the water temperature sender, the oil pressure sender, all of that wiring came here to one side, the right side of this junction bar, and then once the motor is installed back into the engine compartment, then everything that comes from the gauges in the cockpit hook up here to the corresponding wire that's on the right side. Over here you have the fuel pump, which is brand new. or maybe has about 10 hours on it. I ended up having to replace that. This is the fuel filter with the fuel line, and on and on. But it is done, and I am finished. We're going to have to do a little bit of timing and that kind of thing, but for the most part, everything is ready to go. Just a few final touches. I haven't changed the oil yet, but I will be doing that before I put the motor back in. And now that this is done, the next task is this one. And as you can see, this looks pretty much like the motor did before I did any work on it. So I have a lot of cleaning to do. I got to pull the motor mounts out and replace those, which I already have those. This device here receives the exiting water from the motor and sends it back to a muffler, that round black thing that you see back there. But I'm sure that you're going to be seeing more of this as I work on it, and you can see the prop shaft coupling here, which mates up to the coupling that I replaced on the back of the motor. But so this is next, and then after this is done, we put the motor back in and hopefully go do some damn boating instead of all this work. This is what hell looks like if you've ever wondered. Seriously though, this is the inside of the engine compartment without most of the goodies in here. At the very back you can see the gas tank. You can see the hose that goes into the muffler, which I'm going to be taking home today and washing out. You can see the clamps that hold that in place. You can see the through-hull fitting that was replaced when we did the haul out. You can see the prop shaft coupling. You can see that I have a pair of vice grips on there to keep the shaft from sliding back and creating a leak potentially. And up front you can see this is the brand new depth sounder that tells me how deep the water is under the boat. This is the old one, which I left in place. There was another one over here and it was leaking, so they pulled it out, and I bought a new depth sounder, and we will eventually have a display for that. The hose in the center is the bilge pump hose, which we talked about videos ago. And it comes up here, goes up there, and goes out the back of the boat. But this is what it looks like. And as you can kind of see, perhaps, the front of the engine compartment I have cleaned, and it's almost ready for painting. I've taken the motor mounts out, and after this is painted, I'll be putting the new ones on. And I think from here what I'm going to do is go to the very back there underneath the gas tank, and I'm going to start cleaning there, and then slowly working my way forward, being very careful not to begin a leak of the through-hull fitting, which feeds cooling water to the motor, and not messing with this prop shaft coupling, or the prop shaft itself is particularly, so that I don't get more water in this boat than what I can empty out. And right now the batteries are disconnected, so if water were to come gushing in here, there would be nothing to pump it out with. Isn't that a great thought? Anyway, welcome to hell, and I'll show you heaven when I'm finished. Oh, hey guys. You kind of caught me at an inopportune time, but give me a minute and I'll come out and give you the tour. tight fit back there. All right, I made it out. So I'll bring you up to date on the project. You may recall the last time you were with me, or I was with you, I was describing this place as hell. And I think we've made some improvements here. I still need to replace that ugly vent hose there, but I have the replacement. I just haven't put it in yet. But as you can see, I painted the engine compartment. We have the bilge paint over primer, which is where the engine will sit. So any oils or fuel or anything like that will come down onto that paint, which is resistant to those liquids. On the bulkheads on the sides, I just put primer. That's all it is white primer. And that's all it's going to be, because painting on what you see, it was very, very difficult without using any profanity. You can see back there I've reinstalled the muffler, and the opening you see on this side is where the engine will hook up to it to dump the used engine cooling water. Tomorrow I'm going to come down, in spite of the weather forecast, which is supposed to be incredibly windy. I'm going to come down and put the water strainer, the raw water strainer, which will hook up by way of a hose to the through hull and ball valve that you see there. And I'm going to mount it right here, which will be pretty much next to the fuel filter. So I've got the brand new motor mounts on. Ain't they pretty? I've got the newly painted motor, I don't know if you call it a motor mount or a brace or whatever, but anyway, that is on. And so the engine sits on top of these guys and is bolted down, of course. But anyway, we're coming along here. We're making some progress, and today is Tuesday, and the reinstallation of the motor is slated for Sunday. So I have just a couple of more days to get everything finalized and ready to go, and I'm pretty darn close right now. So there you are for now. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a Monday morning. I think 3 weeks since I pulled this motor. But you see anything that looks any different? That motor used to be sitting right about there, and now it's right about there, which is where we all started with this thing. Again, my apologies for not getting the filming of the action as it happened yesterday, but there just was not time or the ability, frankly, to film this. But nonetheless, it is back in. I will tell you that it was about 3 or 4 times harder to get it back in than it was to pull it out. I guess that makes total sense, doesn't it? The primary problem was that the motor sits further back in the engine compartment than what the front of the companionway first step here is. And if you'll recall, the cross member that I had up here that the hoists or the come-alongs hung from, this is forward of that area. So bringing this as far aft as possible and bringing the straps and the come-alongs down. The engine, the center of the engine was about right here, but it had to go right there. So there was a whole lot of 2x4 action. There was a whole lot of prying and pushing and sweating and cussing and all kinds of nasty stuff going on yesterday. But the bottom line is we got the thing back in, and it is almost time to hook this thing back up and see how she runs, if she runs. I'm going to be optimistic and say how she runs. I want to give you a little bit of an education on what I'm dealing with today and what we were dealing with yesterday. The motor mounts are right here, and as you can see, I put brand new motor mounts in. This is kind of a side bracket. I'm not sure what you would call this, but there's one on all four corners, and you can see right here the nut where the other end of that bracket hooks up to the actual engine itself. Now, I really enjoyed working on this motor out of the engine compartment, but let me tell you what, it is a son of a gun, and I'm sure that I've mentioned that in previous videos, but it's a son of a gun to especially get back there to the back where those aft mountings are. But anyway, nonetheless, let's get to the point. I have to tighten down all, there turns out to be 8 nuts, so 1, 2 times 4. And right now I have 6 of the 8, excuse me, I have 7 of the 8 tightened down. The last one that I have to do, I don't know if you can see it, but it's all the way back to the back there, and it is almost impossible to get a wrench on and a socket and all that. So that's what I'm going to be dealing with today. But I also wanted to show you the other thing that I'm going to be dealing with today. Get a little light on the subject, take you back here to the hole. Let me put this down. Well, maybe that'll give you enough illumination. But here is where the rear coupling on the motor mates up with the forward coupling, or the coupling on the prop shaft. And you can see there's a gap there. What you may not be able to see is that the motor is too far to the left, brought back this direction, and needs to be brought in order for this to match up. Height-wise, it seems to be right on, and I think that the bolts that go through the 3 holes holding these 2 couplings together will, I think that'll all mate up the way that it should once I get everything aligned. But that's what the project is for today, and we will see how that goes. And I hope that everybody had a good weekend, and I hope that in the next video you'll be able to see this, see and hear this engine run, and hopefully we'll all get a payoff for all of the work that has been put into this motor over the past 3 weeks. I believe it's 3 weeks. It seems like 8 or 9, but anyway, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.